So, my name is Mahesh Gurram, and I have been with AWS about close to 3 years now, working on multiple major customers on the enterprise side, and also I worked on the public sector side, and also played multiple roles other than solution architect within AWS in my journey here, right? So, today we are going to primarily talk about what is hybrid cloud, how we at AWS look at hybrid cloud, what are some of the breadth and depth features or services that we offer from AWS, and why you should think about hybrid, right? As an end customer, what are the advantages or what are the scenarios and use cases you want to think about hybrid? And finally, I'm going to conclude with a couple of things. Cloud Continuum is a new concept we brought in about 2 years ago on how not only thinking about you as a customer, but also thinking about your customer's customer, right? So where they are located and how we can use cloud services to be as close to that customer as possible, right? So that is what we are going to talk there. And if time permits, we are going to go with some simple patterns. So of all the things that I describe, how we can put all of them together. So normally what we look at hybrid cloud or what the industry in general looks at hybrid cloud is before the cloud itself was a thing, you had remote locations, you had remote users connecting to your hard data centers. And then came in the SaaS providers like the Salesforces of the world where you just pulled in certain things from your SaaS provider. And then we got in cloud, right? Now you have this amazing capability of at AWS. We have about 220 services and trying to leverage all those facility, all those nice things that Amazon gives you, right? And now how that connection works is, as you can see, between your corporate data center and the Amazon regions, we basically can use AWS Direct Connect, which is like a hard link or a hard connection between your data center into AWS. And why you need that is to have a reliable connection rather than traversing the internet for everything that you want, right? Of course, as a backup to your direct connect for whatever reason, if it fails, and as we always say, plan for everything fails all the time, right? So maybe having a VPN connection tunnel into AWS would be a good backup idea. But when you look at this structure, right? So you still have your remote users who are located across the globe, anywhere where they could have great connection or they could have very limited connectivity into the internet, and all of them still want to connect to your data center where maybe you are having some very high intensive applications or some of the applications which have to be there because of 100 different reasons, but you also want to leverage AWS for the newest and greatest capabilities, right? So a few things that we see why customers go into hybrid cloud primarily is things like operational consistency, right? So if you are trying to do something on your on-premises system, you should be able to port it into the cloud very easily, right? Because rewriting these applications or re-architecting the applications will take a lot of time. And it is really good if you are able to do that because you are going to have the ability to use all the greatest technology that we offer in the cloud. But in case, irrespective of that, we want you to, when you're thinking about developing new applications, we want you to have that single consistency and also having the same skill set, right? You don't want people who are going to separately maintain different environments and stuff like that. And of course, like some of the partners talked about having a single way on which you can control, right? For example, if you want to have a new firewall policy, it should be seamless for the firewalling or networking team to make that control at a single place rather than going into different setting up separately on your on premises and within the cloud, right? Again, this will all, if you think about it, will help elevate your experience in the sense your customers' experience, letting them concentrate the developers primarily on developing the tools rather than trying to debug these infrastructure issues wherever they are doing it, right? Having that seamless experience will also help you with your cloud journey because again, all these skills, all the things that you're generating, the guidances that the architecture teams are putting is the same whether you're doing it on premises or within the cloud. Again, definitely thinking long term into the cloud, right? And why do we see a lot of customers or at least enterprise customers think about hybrid cloud and what are the advantages is there might be some of these scenarios where you have to run the workloads on premises because it could be a certain latency requirement, it could be data residency requirement for whatever reason. So there could be certain things where you want the response within sub-millisecond kind of stuff, where connecting to the region, doing stuff within the region and getting the data back might not be feasible, right? So there are scenarios like that. So that is one of the top things. And at the same time, you also want to use the benefits of the cloud, right? So you have this huge amount of data that you're generating. For example, to take that, run analytics, do machine learning, do predictive analytics, and all of that. So you want to have best of the worlds, right? So that is one of the primary reasons I see why customers move to cloud pretty heavily, right? And also, if you think about it, we have been leveraging a lot of new technology. Like, for example, today, if you have an audio file, we can convert it into text. We can give you what is a sentiment within that text, right? So if you think about it, we are adding new capabilities. So having this hybrid cloud approach will not only able to enhance what you have from a capability standpoint, but also will start to leverage some of that data which has not been really explored and into newer fields. And again, we see a lot of customers also using cloud as part of more of our data center extension type of stuff. So we see that very heavily as a DR, backup and disaster recovery on having cloud. So if something goes wrong and you're attacked, which has been, we have been seeing more and more of cyber attacks recently. So if something like that happens, you want to scale up immediately within your cloud region in AWS. And we have been seeing a lot of customers use that. And also there might be some cloud bursting, right? So for example, you could be running application, but you might need that specific GPU, which is very high end GPU on your data center to perform some kind of machine learning training, right? Rather than buying all of that, you could use cloud to do that and basically export the model back onto on premises. That way you're using the cloud for the bursting and you're not like really paying expensive dollars to get that infrastructure on premises. And of course, geographic expansion is huge. We have multiple regions that are spread across. We are opening up 4 new regions in the next couple of years. So when you look at our presence, we have about 26, 27 regions spread across the world. And if you want to expand to a specific region, all you have to do is take whatever you have within one region and replicate it across. And that is going to be seamless as well, right? So going global is going to be very easy, especially when you have. So again, we have seen this data center expansion with multiple customers, all the way from someone like Johnson and Johnson into Comcast and also Reach and stuff. So coming to AWS specifically on how we achieve some of these services, right? We basically look at, we have about 220 services, and we primarily have specific services which are very, very supportive of hybrid. So those are the things I'm going to talk about for the next few slides. So if you look at it, like we have direct connect, as I talked about, it's a direct link between your between your AWS and your data center. We have systems manager where, think about it, like you're now launching these hundreds of EC2 instances and you want to add a patch or you want to maintain certain things. So you have this much easily available using something like systems manager. But specifically coming towards the right in the slide, right? So we have certain things like you have this AWS transfer family where you basically you have this large amounts of data that is sitting on your on premises, and how can you leverage the cloud, right? So this basically the snowball devices that you see and the transfer family will help you do that much easily. And also we support VMware on AWS, right? Again, that is huge. If you're already using VMware on premises, you can basically exactly use the same thing on your cloud as well. And we also have something called, this is a takeover we did, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago, Cloud Endure, where if you want to start to migrate your data, or if you want to start to even discover what are the different items within your on-premises environment, so you can start about thinking, how can I use AWS and what are the things I can offload to AWS. Cloud Endure works very, very well in the sense it basically installs an agent, and then you can basically, it gives you all the discovery, and in the behind the scene, it also uses transfer into the data into AWS to kind of give you what are the AWS corresponding things, right? And finally, we also do support a lot of fully managed desktop as a service kind of stuff. So if you run on Windows, we have something called AWS Workspaces, where you can use literally an in Windows, it's a desktop in the cloud, or you also can use AppStream, right? Where it is more like you just are using it through the browser, you get the good experience about using it. So quickly going through, right, again, this is just giving you a very high level view of what it is, how we support it, right? So again, VMware Cloud on AWS, this is where if you have vCenter on premises, then you can pretty much move all of that into something like a combination of EC2s and stuff like that. Or we basically also have VMware within EC2. And again, you can use the backbone of AWS in this case. And once the data is in AWS, you can use cloud formation templates, and then you can try to tie all of that amazingly well with some of our new services that we have. Again, going to cloud, moving on to the cloud and your disaster, right? So basically, what you do as part of this is you kind of start to you basically have want to use AWS as your DR, right? So you basically consolidate, or wherever you have all your in the scenario where we talked about before, where you have your remote and multiple data centers, right? We just came up with the example of one, but most of the customers have multiple data centers, right? So you could basically have all of those and have your cloud engineer install their agents and start to use AWS as the backup, right? So if ransomware or something like that happens, you still have all of your data within AWS, right? Again, and storage gateway is really one of the things that I really like personally, is because again, what it does is it basically it takes all the data that you can have on your on-premises and it starts shifting all of that into AWS. But anything that has been recently used, maybe in last 30 days or last 24 hours, based on some of the settings we can do, it stores that in the cache in your data center, right? So that for those applications which need that data within that sub millisecond, AWS storage gateway will give you that capability to do that. That way you can have benefits of both, right? Again, so now we talked a lot about how this all of these, but what if you have like petabytes or terabytes of data, right? So we have these snowball devices. As you can see, you have the snowmobile. We range all the way from the snowball to snowmobile. We also have what we call snow cone, where you can basically, the idea there is these are hardware devices that we send to you. You can plug in these into your data centers, transfer the data, and then ship it back. The data is encrypted the moment you put it in, and all these devices come with some kind of capability like basic computer and Lambda capabilities. And the nice thing there is you don't have to use your bandwidth to transfer the data. You can just do this, and the only drawback is it takes about anywhere between 3 to 7 business days, based on how long the shipping takes and stuff. But this is amazing if you really think about how much amount of data, or you have this huge amount of data sitting in your data center and moving it onto the cloud frees up all those data in your data center too, right? So for better things, or you totally can retire all of that too. So end user computing, again, as I said, we have this transfer devices where you can, sorry, where you can use this transfer into using SFTP and stuff like that, right? So you can use the transfer AWS transfer to directly interact with where you can expose all these SFTP, because this is, I think, again, very useful when you have multiple, like you as a customer, you have multiple vendors sending you files, right? So you can have this AWS transfer SFTP where your users or your vendors can directly put files into that, and then you could have a process of making sure everything is good before you put it onto your S3 bucket, right? Again, this is very specific for SFTP scenarios, which I see a lot of customers going into. So as we talked about, right, we talked a lot about the region and a lot of capabilities we have within them, which I think is going to solve most of the use cases where you want to come very close. You want to use all the capabilities of the regions. At the same time, you want to have something on premises as well, because of different different reasons like data residency and data latency and stuff, right? So that is where you see the on premises. And we also see scenarios where you have your customers, right? For example, an end customer might be somewhere in Miami or something like that, where the closest region you have is Virginia in those scenarios, right? So, but there is still that latency, right, between your end customer and connecting to the region. So, what we came up with, we basically have something called Outpost, which we'll talk about in a second here. Wavelength as well, right? So, Wavelength is where we actually partner with some of the third-party vendors, third-party telcos like Verizon in this case, to be that central point where you can directly interact and they directly have a connection into the regions, right? And also metro centers, so what we call local zones. So we have, rather than having the complete region spread across, creating a multiple region. So we have something called local zones where we have some capabilities at the edge, right? So if you think about it, we are trying to get as close to your customer as possible, so you can use some of the benefits of the cloud, right? So what I'm trying to get to here is, when you think about your strategy of hybrid cloud, don't just think about on-premises and AWS cloud, right? Also think about some of these newer capabilities that we are giving you, specifically wavelength um, and local zones, right? And also, if you are using some kind of IoT devices, right? If you are in that kind of, we also have something called green grass and all of those, where you can use it if your products use IoT. Again, trying to get closer into one of these or using the wavelengths might be the right approach for you, right? So as I said, so there are three things that we want to talk about here, right? The first one is AWS Outpost. What it is it basically the entire hardware that we send, and that we send into your data center, right? So you can pretty much plug in into your data center, into your network, and it is an extension of the AWS cloud, right? So we have a list of services we support on AWS Outpost. We do basic ones like EC2, S3, RDS, and stuff like that. So using the exact same AWS APIs, exact same AWS console that you use, you will be able to leverage all the benefits of the AWS Outpost within your data center. So if you go back to what we were initially talking about, one of the biggest things we as AWS wanted you to have is seamless experience across, whether wherever you are on premises or in the cloud. Outpost will help you with that, right? That's exactly what we wanted, but also providing you with that low latency wherever you need them, right? I have seen customers myself where they train all these complex models within AWS cloud, and then they move them onto the cloud outpost, AWS Outpost, and use those models with sub millisecond latency, right? Again, local zone, as I said, is which within within selected metropolitan areas, like we have Miami, we have Atlanta, we have LA, Boston, and stuff, and we are opening up new of them. Where again, you can do base some of the capabilities where your customers can connect in and use some of them. And finally, wavelength is where we tie up with someone like Verizon within US, where we can do that. So as I promised, I think I have. Let me see how much more time. I think I have a few more minutes here. So if you look at the overall picture that I just spoke about, right? So this is how you, when you look at it, it would be like, right? So you have these regions, US East 1 and US East 2. Those are our regions, and we always have a transit through which everyone gets in. So if you have a direct connect, you will be directly connected into that. And then we have these external ASNs through which you are going to connect in, right? And if you look towards the bottom, you will see something called edge locations. Edge locations, edge locations is where we provide some of the capabilities like Route 53, CloudFront. These are for scenarios where you want to stream videos and stuff, right? So where you want to store that as close to your customer as possible. We also have a version of Lambda, which is called Lambda at the Edge, where you can perform certain operations, right? And then you have this public peering and stuff. So let's say you are a user, or you have one of your users located in Miami, and they are trying to connect into AWS, right? And they are trying to use some of the capabilities of AWS. One of the things that they could be is basically you have your CSP or ISP in this case, and they are pretty large, right? And so they might directly have a connection with AWS. They might basically be much easier, or to use a 200 plus AWS services or the capabilities that we have, or they could go and use some of the edge locations as well, right? So if you think about it, the way we are traversing the path is, if you want to use one of those 200 services, you're going to go directly into the through the transit into the region. If not, you're going to perform the same operation at the edge, right? But if, let's say, you are not using those one of the larger CSPs or ISPs that you have, but you are using maybe someone with a smaller one, right? So they might have to have those individual connections, or they might be using the raw internet into traversing that. But if you see the primary difference in this case, where might have unreliable connection, is because they decide, your CSP will decide how they want to come in into the AWS network. They might in the process go through a larger traffic routes, right? So those are some of the things that you want to consider while you're thinking about how to use your networking, right? Sorry. So the other option, where I said is the local zones is the local zones are always are present at the edge locations. Not all of edge locations have it. As I said, Miami, there are few edge locations where we provide local zones where you can use some of those capabilities. But if you are using something like Verizon, where you are going to use the wavelength, you're basically going to connect into without using wavelengths. You're directly going in through something called mobile packets and stuff like that. But if you are going to use Miami wave, the wavelength, you are basically going to directly connect into AWS region through that direct connect that we are going to have through Verizon, right? So that is going to basically help you, right? So in this case, if you're seeing you are going to use the Miami edge locations in this case, rather than traversing the path all the way through, you're basically using wavelengths, and wavelengths basically will help you with having much faster access into the region and enabling those capabilities. Again, when you ask me which one is the best and how do we solve this problem, I think there is a, if you think about your entire hybrid architecture, it should not just be one solution. You should think about your customers, where they are located, how soon access they want, and then start to prioritize and break up your application landscape into which applications should last where and how long should it last, and then use a combination of all these to give you that hybrid, unique hybrid experience that we at AWS are thinking about, right? Again, there are all of these services play very well into pretty much most of the services. Like as you can see, you have EC2 support, you have and within AWS you have Cube EKS support as well. So if you think about it, now your end customers are going to have all these compute storage capabilities on the way they can use the cloud, right? Again, we are seeing a lot of customers use this cloud, hybrid cloud, in a really good fashion, and they are like Zscaler uses it for the security patterns and stuff like that. And as I said, if you are really interested or if you want to have further discussions about the hybrid, I know this is like a 30-minute, very high level. I threw like a lot of services at you. Feel free to either talk to me or contact me on LinkedIn or something, and we can definitely see. If not, if you already are working with AWS team, you would have a solutions architect assigned to you, your team. Feel free to contact one of us. We would be more than happy to kind of dive deep and look more into your specific scenario and maybe help you with what we think might be the right solution.